All right, well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Sandra Campos, and I've spent my entire career in this wonderful retail world, running various businesses, brands, retailers, and sit on various boards now between public company boards, private company boards, one of which is Fabric as well. So I'm happy to be here with them talking about what we're all talking about today, which is AI, what that's going to mean to us. And from a retailer's perspective, what are those priorities? How do we make sure that we're looking at this as a return on investment? And how do we convince management and within the organization, what are the most important areas to tackle first? So I'm going to introduce our esteemed panel here, which we have Dan Crowe, and I'll let you guys talk about yourselves in a minute as well. And Dan is with RueGilt Group. We have Jon Reily, who is at the end, who is a top 100 retail influencer, congratulations, and with Bounteous. And then we have Muriel Naim, who is the VP of Design and UX User Experience at Fabric. So I'll let you guys just share a little bit about yourselves before we get started.
I'll go first. I'm Dan Crowe, CTO of RueGilt Group, which is about a $1 billion online fashion e-commerce company. We have Rue and Gilt.com that you may know. I've been there for about almost 2 years. Prior CTO roles at Wheels Up, Weight Watchers, and Autotrader.com. So a lot of consumer-facing and retail-oriented roles for me.
Great.
Muriel Naim. I'm the VP of Design, UX, and Research at Fabric, which is a very wild startup here in the e-commerce world. Previously, I was the head of UX international strategy for Walmart Labs. I worked for Walmart Canada as the head of UX, and I was in Disney UX architecture for their infrastructure for ABC and Disney affiliates. Other than that, a lot of startups. That's it.
Okay. Jon.
And Jon Reily, Senior Vice President of Commerce and Loyalty at Bounteous. We're a digital marketing agency. I've been in retail for almost 30 years now. Last 10 years or so, I've been on the consulting side of the business, Publicis, Dentsu, and now Bounteous. Before that, I was client side. I was at Amazon, Guitar Center. So you mentioned startups. I was employee number 9 at GoDaddy. So yeah, I've seen a lot of movies, as I jokingly say.
Well, obviously, all of these panelists have experience with enterprise level businesses, very large scale, some cases startup to high growth. And that's what we're talking about, right? In this industry that has and is such a roller coaster ride, we used to have a lot more time in between those dips. We haven't had much time in between these last dips. Now, as we looked at the last 3 years, we were talking about metaverse, we were talking about NFTs, we were talking about crypto. Now it's all about AI. So have we pivoted? Does that really resonate right now? What's happening with AI is such a general, broad term. How do we utilize it to truly do what every retailer needs, which is to convert more customers? So Dan, I'm going to start with you because you've seen a lot throughout your career. You're obviously leading a very big organization now from a technology innovation standpoint. How important is AI in general? And then what within AI resonates as the most important within your organization that's very digital first?
Right, and I'm glad you kind of hit on metaverse, and we've all seen some of the trends come and go. I would say this one feels more real to us. It's more accessible, like, okay, and we're going to get into how do you invest in it and all that later in the talk, but for us, it feels real. We're calling it a strategic priority for our company. We're putting resource behind it, and we're looking at a variety of business problems it can solve, right? Right off the bat, how do we humanize and personalize the digital shopping experience? We have a highly curated, discovery-based shopping experience, and we look at Gen AI, and it's like, this is a discovery tool, and we have a discovery model. So it seems like very good synergy there to personalize and humanize shopping. We think we can drive better margins in our operating costs, but through the automation that you've all heard about. We also think that we can help our marketing messages break through. You know, there's a sea of emails and SMSs that everybody gets, but we think more tailored and personalized using some of this technology. We're already doing that, right? It can definitely help us, and there's other uses too. Like every other big retailer, we already do AI. So we do a lot with machine learning and personalization, but talking to our data scientists, they view Gen AI as a way to put a text-based interface on top of our existing machine learning models So it's more humanized interface for the data scientists in a way, or even business users, as opposed to just pure SQL. So there's a lot of opportunity with what we're seeing evolve here.
Okay, but can we dig into the first part, which, it's pretty broad what you've just mentioned. It hits a lot of different functions. And the reality is we can't do it all at once. It's too costly, it's too time consuming. So realistically, if you talk about the user journey and the user experience first, and it's data, bad data in, bad data out, right? Good data in, good data out. But you've also, in this industry, which is so complex, you get a lot of data. So how do you see that helping the internal teams through AI and the functionality that you guys are going to?
Is it back to me?
implement? It's
Okay.
back to you, sir.
Okay.
I'm staying with you.
Oh, thank you, thank you. No, I would address that first point. So I do think we need to spread around little pockets of innovation, because what I said is broad, but you know what? We have a marketing team that's really interested in it. We have a data science team that's really interested in it. We have a product and design team. So I'm looking for grassroots innovations from all these teams, and we have a lot of support for that. So we do feel like we can go broad. We can't put $100 million against it, but we can have little pockets and look for those green shoots. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it now. My job as CTO, though, is to help have a framework for it, provide some tools, some guardrails, but let those green shoots grow.
And with that, though, is your tech team internally very large to be able to substantiate all of that across the functions, or are you actually also bringing in some outsourced resources?
Well, we're doing a combination, right? So we have a sizable tech team, very talented. We have, in the United States, we have a new tech center in Ireland that we opened up last year. We have some talented technologists and data scientists. So we're doing that internally, but we also are working with vendor partners, many of whom are here. I'll be a wise guy for a minute and say, what the good news is, every one of them says they're the leader in generative AI. So how lucky are we? But we think we have
Doing
a lot
their
to
job.
learn from the vendor community as well, to reach out for that kind of assistance.
Okay, so Muriel, getting into that from your side, leading the technologists who are developing a lot of this generative AI that's actually going to go across into this user experience. Talk about what can retailers do? Who and how do they partner with those outside resources? It's a big mountain we have to climb, and it's not going to happen overnight. So what should we realistically look for? What are those phases, and how are you implementing that even within your own teams at Fabric?
So I'll talk about it from the design perspective, because I don't see design as the visual aspect of things you see on the website, right? Good design is based on research. Any good design. You need to understand what the problem is to solve for it, right? If you just design something cute or pretty, that's awesome, but it doesn't really give you the answer to what you're looking for. AI is no different. It's the exact same thing. So I would actually put the focus on research, which is a very overlooked subject matter in tech. I think for the first time in many, many years in this industry, research is at the epicenter of AI. And if you lean into quantitative and qualitative, so both talking with people, understanding their problems, and looking into not only heat maps, but where do people get stuck in your experience today, we can actually see what they need for real and what are the pain points that they have today that you can accelerate the solution for. The same thing goes for good design. If you don't know what we're starting with, if you don't know where you look at, if you don't analyze exactly what we're seeing and scale it up and scale it down as much as needed, we don't know how to design well. Doesn't matter how pretty it is. So I see that as well. I think research is the epicenter of AI, and I really hope the spotlight will go into researchers back, as it should be in tech.
And so how are you working then with your retail partners to be able to create more of that data and more of that rich information that you need to be able to validate that research?
So it's a bifold answer. First of all, we have to look at data, of course, but how do we look at data? I would say typically what we look at, right, is heat maps, areas of friction, things that we have a lot of tools to look at. But what about the things that you don't see? What about the things that make people stuck and they don't know where to go? A heat map will not show you that. So I think, and it's interesting, and it might be controversial, that the more AI we go, the more human-centric we go. We actually have to speak with people and understand their mindset so that we can prompt a generative AI rather than other types of AI, just reading what the data says. So I do think the EQ aspect of it is extremely important. Where do they get mad? Why? What makes your day harder? What is the thing you do every day? So we do that at Fabric today. Just a part of what we're doing today. So we're collecting an enormous amount of data, and we lean into the friction points, the emotional hard points, and the physical things. There's a lot of retailers doing physical things today. They use Excel, they use boards, they do phone calls. And we only found out about it while speaking with them recently. So we did research with a bunch of different customers and prospective customers to understand how do they work today. You'll be shocked in how many things are still old stack. Same way it was 20 years ago. There's no difference.
Well, if you've been around for a while, everything comes full circle.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jon, I'm not suggesting you've been around for a while, but this leads right into the segue as it relates to digital marketing and the customer, where they get stuck, what they're looking for. And what are you hoping, just seeing the various different businesses? You've been on the tech side, you've seen consumers and what the wants are, you're actually working with retailers of various sizes. But what do you see as the biggest problem right now in your world that AI is going to be able to solve? And how are you putting your resources towards that?
Well, to start with, retailers are struggling with you mentioned it was a slow moving mountain. I will disagree with that point. I think it's a very fast moving mountain. AI's gone from zero to ubiquity in 12 months. A year ago, maybe 5% of the businesses out here were talking about Gen AI. Today, every single one of them is. And so my customers are saying, I missed out on automation. I missed out on machine learning. I don't want to miss out on this, but I don't know what to do. I don't know if I have AI. And we say things like, you're probably already using it. You have fraud protection, right? That's AI. You have real-time inventory, that's AI. So it's really just maturing those things into stepping it forward to, you can do better things with the stuff you already have. It's not necessarily, I'm going to buy this new thing. It's doing better things and doing things better at the same time. So to your specific question of what the kind of thing that they're looking for and how the teams can work better, instantly every brand has the opportunity to have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week employee that knows every single thing about that sector. And to your point, Dan, where those pockets are there and they can learn, and I'm using they as the AI, it can learn, it can get smarter and eventually connect the dots where it becomes the unifier between all of these groups. Something I spend so much time talking to brands about is silos. How do I get stuff out of silos? Gen AI is going to be a key, a golden key, to break open silos and do it efficiently, and more importantly, do it out in the open, where everybody can see what it's doing and learn from it and make processes better. So I'm super excited about this.
Clearly. So that's, at the end of the day, AI wasn't invented 12 months ago.
Right.
AI has been around for decades.
Yes.
So it's also been about teaching and the machine learning, so that we're actually, now we just have a lot of information to be able to utilize to put that into the technology, right, and apply it.
Well, if you consider, Amazon just killed the Amazon Echo project a year and a half ago. That was the perfect opportunity for Gen AI, but they didn't see it. They weren't able to put the dots together. And I can do that, somewhat self-indictingly, because I worked on that program. The Alexa was always just a decision tree. It was AI, but it was just machine learning. And now we have the opportunity to be able to say, this is a machine that can learn. It's not machine learning, it's a machine that can learn. And as we teach it, it's just like another employee, but to my point, doesn't need bathroom breaks, doesn't take vacations. It's always there and always learning.
It's kind of like my horses. They never take vacation. Yes, please, go.
So a couple of interesting things just want to respond to. One is the leapfrog opportunity that we're talking about. And for some people like ourselves, we've invested in AI and machine learning. We think that gives us an advantage. But if someone was going to leapfrog us with generative AI, it's like, oh, okay, that would be bad. So we have to push forward on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Oh, for sure. And I just had breakfast with a retailer this morning and said, if you being, all of the vendors in this building, could find a way to take my garbage data, dump it into Snowflake, put an AI layer on the top of it, and spit out a one-to-one conversation, you'd make $1 billion. And she's 100% correct. So it's critical for brands like you to push that envelope. Seek out those solutions, because that drives the marketplace.
Okay, so I'm going to stay on this for a little bit. You brought up Amazon. We all know what Amazon has done, how much it has grown, and what they've invested in technology. We also know, on the other side, some legacy brands and retailers that have not really stepped up their investment in technology, may not really be focusing on digital as much as they are in terms of their own retail footprint, brick and mortar wise. But if we talk about Amazon, there's always one seat left over in a meeting, right? And that seat's for the customer sitting at Amazon, because they're customer obsessed first. And that is it. But one of the other brilliant things is that they also forecast and replenish and do these things automatically. And I want to kind of go into that, because right now we have such an issue. We have a lot of issues, right? But we have one issue of which is we've got returns. So why do returns happen? We didn't necessarily plan the assortments correctly, so they're not necessarily either selling, or we've got women who buy 3 dresses and keep 1, so we've got those kind of things happening. But we just hit the $1 trillion mark in returns in 2023, which is massive compared to what we actually sold online. So we're into that flip-flop situation. So I want to get into being that customer obsessed, and how do we make sure that what we're giving is, I'll bring in blockchain for a minute, because it's the intent of that is to be decentralized, so that there's not one person that can actually impact the change. But how are you going to work with your teams to make sure that everything that you do and everything you impact takes that research, takes that data that everybody's talking about, but also keeps the customer in mind first, so that your solutions come out and are customer oriented?
Well, you hit returns. So that is a huge issue for everybody, for us too. And one way to attack it, but one way to attack it is with better product data, better product description, more accurate, so the consumer really knows what they're getting, they know how it might fit them, et cetera. And we're already working with a tool to do visualized, a visual version of AI to do product attribute data. It's like, look at this dress and say, okay, this is a dress for a cocktail party, or it's red sequin, and here's an occasion. Anyway, a lot more elaborate product data than what we might have now. Why? Because then the consumers are going to have a better knowledge and can make a better selection, probably less likely to return it. They're probably likely to be more happy. So that's one specific use case we're working on right now, keeping the we call them members, keeping our members in mind.
That's amazing. But you don't have it in practice yet?
No, we're just,
okay.
Doing all the tests and POCs and whatnot. No, it's not in prod.
And what do you hope is going to come out of that? What KPIs are you looking for that to accomplish?
To me, there could be multiple, right? It could be propensity to return, could be lifetime value, could be lower returns. I mean, there's several KPIs that could move, having better product data. I mean, we're all shoppers. We all go through and we all want to get the right thing for us. And sometimes you think, well, I think it's going to work for me, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to buy 3 sizes and know I can turn it back. We would like to reduce that if possible.
Jon, how much of the problems that you're hearing from your retailers, would you say that there's the top 3? Or are you hearing just a widespread memo of different challenges that they're focused on?
In terms of what you just said, Dan, the idea that we can remove a lot of that rock breaking that we're using really smart people to do today and offload that to other things like Gen AI to free up those people to do things, that's something that's really attractive. Because right now we have, an army of data scientists, really smart people locked in rooms, pouring through data to give us forecasts that may or may not be right because they may not have all the information. They can't parse the bad data. And I'm, once again, self-indicting that. But the idea that we can have a machine, for lack of a better term, to be able to do that instantly or pretty close to instantly and give us almost the quality and not even maybe even better information and free up those people to do other things, that's amazing. And something else you talked about with copy is the idea that a lot of copy on the internet it's boring. It doesn't really require a lot of thought to it. AI is great for that. Gen AI specifically is great for that. But it can't think, it can't feel those things that are real time, that are not, historical, where I need to be able to think and react to something that's happening right now. You and I can do that because we're in the moment. The AI's information is only as good as the last data dump I put into it, which could be as much as a month old or maybe even older than that. So that ability to be able to act very quickly, it can't do necessarily, but now I'm freeing up people who can. And so to me, it's the ability for retailers to be able to say, I can change my organization and change not in I'm going to, let this machine put people out of work, but rather rise these people up to be able to do better things that they want to do, as opposed to having to do all this grunt work that they're doing today.
Okay, so how do you convince the retailers, though, who now are pressured more than ever to be profitable, who now are pressured more than ever to reduce their operating expenses? How do you convince them that this is a long haul, right? This is an investment. This is something that you're going to see some return on within X percent, X given time, but then you're also going to be able to see this return years from now.
Right.
How are you convincing them?
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, so in a way, it's both. It's a little bit of a, we'll just spend and pray like we did with social 10 years ago, where we didn't really know what social was going to do, but we all had the feeling, I have to do this, and I can't necessarily measure the ROI in a hard sense, but I know it'll work out. We've solved that problem today. But also the beauty of it is all of these tools can be deployed so quickly that I can get results very quickly. You know, you have brands like Fabric, you have brands like Persado, where you can put things into a cart and get an answer in 3 weeks, right? I mean, that's incredible. So that makes retailers and businesses very nimble. And one of the things, you know, in software development we talked about for ages is, you know, agile development, which wasn't really very agile. I mean, it was literally using Post-it notes on a wall. But now we have the ability to be agile because we're getting faster data, we're getting faster information. And that was my point about doing better things and doing better things faster.
Okay, the agility aspect is really key. How many people in this audience are retailers? Would you raise your hand? Okay, and how many of you guys think that you're agile enough right now as a company? One. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Talk to that person.
Okay, so if you go in, Dan, to talk about how do you, now you're running a specific business with a board and a C-suite that you have to convince your partners, your team members, everybody beneath at all levels that this is important no matter what. Right. What are you using as whether case studies or any type of models that you're presenting that are actually allowing this future thinking to be real time now?
Well, we do have a board, and our board asks these questions. They were, well, I've been reading a lot about this Gen AI and ChatGPT. What are we doing? So it's we need to step up and say, well, as a matter of fact, we're doing this, 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 and this. I work closely with our CEO, and he and I believe this is and the other executives too, believe this is of strategic importance. And you get into the balancing act of, okay, what's the sense of urgency around it? Is it, let's just see how it plays out versus the company, or something in between? And, you know, we're going to be something in between. But we have a lot of interest of the senior people in the company and at the board level that this looks like it's real. And I did want to just react to one comment, that the accessibility and approachability of this technology, pretty much any non-specialist can actually use it and experience it. And that's different than some of these other things that have come through where you need, okay, we need some specialists to do it. Mm-hmm. So I think that is going to help accelerate things too. But no, you've got to get it. I think it starts from the top, and which we're starting from the top. And then there's the grassroots efforts I talked about before to get people excited. And we'll see which ones get some traction. Look, we're a retailer, same margins as everyone else. We can't throw unlimited amounts of money at this, but we put seed investments here and there and almost treat it like a startup, mm-hmm. which seems like it's got some progress. Yeah. Progress. Keep funding. So,
how many people have used ChatGPT or use it on a regular basis?
Everybody. Yeah.
Okay. How many of you were intimidated by it? So this answers your question. No one was intimidated by ChatGPT because it's more user-friendly, similar to social media, everybody's on it.
Because it's an outside thing. It's not inside your platform. It's not inside your SaaS. It doesn't affect your money.
Okay, so now go into that.
It's a big one. Okay, so generative AI as a new tab that doesn't affect any of your criteria, right? Money, pricing, offers, doesn't matter, right? It's just a personal outside to get you input faster. But there's no risk in that. So they get your trust, right? You go outside, you try something new, you got a great prompt or a bad prompt, no price whatsoever, just close the tab. The difference in embarking on that inside SaaS, software is, you know, right, everything software, is that you have to be really, really careful on where you place it and what the risk you're allowing your customers to take. And actually, how do you make this risk as low as possible? So I think that's where data, suggestion, and analytics comes together. You don't want to necessarily start with automating those AI suggestions inside those platforms. You want to give the control to the retailer and let them see what's possible, what's a possible return, what can they try, and then follow their journey to ensure they're happy, right? You have to do that first. Because if you just include some kind of a ChatGPT, right, inside that's automatic, you're kind of losing a little bit of this retailer trust. And trust is the hardest thing to nail. It's the hardest thing to sell. So ChatGPT is a great example. If you go outside, if you go to Dali, if you go to ChatGPT or whatever, any of those things, Adobe Photoshop with a picture that maybe is not existing in your website, you can go wild and you can go bold and there's no price to you. But as a retailer, as we all know, it's so incredibly important that your inventory is in real time, that all of your pricing is exactly on point, that things are changing based on the weather and literally weather and based on different areas, that we have to give you the control. I think with time, we can start automating those things when we see that you actually adopt them. So I think that's the difference in including it inside rather than outside. It's a great call.
So Muriel, can you then talk about, Fabric's OMS, right, which everyone's using OMS. So can you talk about how you're then applying that into the order management system that then goes directly to consumer experience?
Right. So I see it in a way of layers, and that's how we deal with it in Fabric. We don't jump to those AI features just like that, right? We start with really solid research and ensuring that the places that we interact with the user on. So the user is the center of our, I don't like to say user, I like to say person. A merchant, a retailer is in the center of our experience, right? We need to meet them at the right time, exactly when they need this type of insight so they can act upon it with AI. We don't want to just start automating things in case it's something you're not 100% sure about. For instance, price for something, right? Let's say you have an uptick or a downtick for whatever reason. You might want to create some kind of a rule in your system that says, hey, when inventory goes minus whatever, like under a certain amount, I would like to introduce another 500 stock from this other warehouse. Maybe that can be automated because you created the rule set and we helped you set it up. But if something happens in real time, maybe there's a crazy weather condition, you need to add something, you need to extend your aisle immediately. In our OMS system today, you get the suggestion at the right time without risking your current inventory or your current aisles as they stand. So it's about presenting it to you at the right time, in the right place, and giving you control to understand what would you like to do really quickly. And I think the biggest thing that I'd like to add about Fabric is that speed is extremely important for us. At the end of the day, what AI does for ChatGPT, for instance, another generative AI, it reduces the speed at the end of the day, right? It just makes you do things faster and hopefully getting to your target or what you're trying to do in the first place. And if not, you can adjust it a little bit, keep listening to you as you get to the end result. So that's where we do it in Fabric today. And we are very tactile. It's not just kind of plopping it in different areas in our experience, but we're trying to get it to you at the right time and start small. I think it's important with AI that you start small. If it's a small automation suggestion, if it's a small different inventory stacks, if it's an uptick, downtick on an analytic of like something goes down, your sales go down in a certain area, what can you do to make it better? Here are 3 suggestions that worked in the past 24 months. That can be useful for you. So that's what we're doing today.
Dan, predict 12 months from now, are we going to still be talking about generative AI?
I definitely think so. I think we'll be talking about it more than some of the other very hyped technologies, partly because it's accessible. Every single person raised their hand. They're all, it's not just a few specialists in the corner. So I've got to believe that the grassroots, the people will come up with a lot of great ideas and use for this. Plus, there's a ton of money behind it. Every big vendor out there is putting huge amounts of money into it. So the real prediction is, do we think we're going to see business results enough that we're really hitting the gas pedal on it? And I think so. What's
the timing in which you think you're going to be able to see some sort of ROI? Are you giving 12 months for this function and this functionality to be able to prove some ROI?
I'd say something like that seems reasonable, right? Okay. I don't have the specific answer, but it can't be 3 years. Let's do a little bit here and see what happens. Let's do a little bit there, see what happens. What's promising? Where do we want to double down a little bit? And where do we want to, that might be too hard. So, but I think a year from now, we should see some green shoots and some benefits coming to fruition. We're hopeful.
Jon, prediction for you?
I'm going to tack on to that. So it's going to become a commodity. I mean, it'll just be a thing. Nobody thinks about the electricity that comes into your house. In 1900, every business had a chief electricity officer. In 1920, no one did. And then, I'm old enough to remember when we first started selling things on the internet, we didn't know what that would be. And what it ultimately ended up with was not exactly what it is today. But in terms of the ROI, it's just going to be not necessarily if I spend, what will I get? It will be, if I don't act, will I be left behind? And to your point, there's lots of brands that'll leapfrog, and there's lots of brands that'll be left on the side of the road. And this is just going to be another one of those filters that unfortunately just ticks retailers off because they don't act fast enough.
Any last takeaways, Muriel, from all of this that you're hearing from these retail experts?
Very useful for you. I'm sitting here and absorbing information so we can enhance our platform. I think it's really interesting. There's like a fast and a slow, and I think at the end of the day, it comes to what does your customer want?
Right.
What do they want?
Right.
try to understand what they want when, and if you can help you do it faster, then any retailer can win.
Right.
But we need to enable you to see your customer for real and then see what they can do with your platform.
I'll
If
make
we
one
give you the
suggestion about that
ability.
before we go.
Yeah.
If you ask the customer what they want, just like Henry Ford, they will ask for a faster horse. It's our job to define what the future is and what will be better.
Let's talk about that.
Not in a ivory tower kind of way, but your expertise, everybody in this room's expertise, that will define the future, and it's going to be a wild ride.
There you go. Quote of the day. It's going to be a wild ride. Thank you guys so much for coming and for hearing this great panel and thanks for being
Sandra.
part of it.
Thank you.